first introduction to you was ECW with your amazing tag team with Tony Mamaluke, your outstanding matches with Super Crazy and Tajiri. But the introduction to you, I mentioned off the top of the show, ECW. How did you even end up in ECW?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you know this, but I started in ECW in 1993.
When it was Eastern Championship Wrestling?
Right. So I was being trained at that time by Gino Caruso up in Parsippany. Tommy Cairo was going up there, and I was a student. I only had a few matches. I was wrestling as Damian Stone, and Tommy Cairo was up there, and he asked me, he goes, I met this guy, Todd Gordon. He's running a show in Philadelphia. It's at some fair for special needs or whatever. He's like, he told me to bring someone down to work with. So, he's like, you want to go? And at that time, I was coming, that was great. I'm finally going to do a show, It was probably my fourth or fifth, but I do these small, school shows. I was brand new. So I go down there and me and Tommy Cairo have a match and this outside event. And we met Todd, and he's like, he liked what we did. He's like, hey, I want you. And at that time, he was also running. This was just like a special thing he did because he had the ring. That's where I met Tony Stetson, Larry Winters, Johnny Hotbody. That's all those. Those were all the guys in Eastern Championship Wrestling. So Todd started booking us in the Chestnut Cabaret and the place on Market Street and all those little bars that he used to run out there. And we were on TV in Sports Channel Philadelphia, and so I wrestled there. So now I knew Todd Gordon, and I got an opportunity in 1994 to go to Japan and work for UWFI. So I left there. So I wrestled for Todd for 2 years as Damian Stone. Nothing to do with Little Guido. Nobody even knew what that was yet. I went to Japan. When I came home, it was like the end of 95, beginning of 96, and Tommy Dreamer and Taz were doing and Paul Heyman were doing Eastern Championship Wrestling. It turned into Extreme now. I didn't know this because I was in Japan for like a year and a half, so I didn't know, and we didn't get the TV out there. And now I know Tommy Dreamer and Taz because we all started different schools, but around the same time, and I worked for a lot of promotions with those guys. And worked doing jobs for IWCCW. So I got to know Tommy and Tab. So when I came home, I gave Tommy a call because he was, I heard that he was, helped Paul with the writing, the booking, whatever he was doing. And I knew Tom forever. He's like, hey, Mick, come down to Lost Battalion Hall in Queens next week. We're doing TV. He goes, I'll introduce you to Paul Heyman. And I went down there, and that's when I was wrestling, like I said, Damian Stone. And he introduced me to him, and he asked me, to accompany to me. And when I went up to him, I said, hey, how you doing? I'm Damian Stone. And he goes, I know who you are, because Paul probably did watch. He knew what went on. I wrestled all over New York, on the independent circuit. At that time, I was wrestling in Japan, so I was in the dirt sheets by the time I met Paul, So, he probably did see me around. He did know who I am, but, he wasn't. I just wanted to be respectful. I didn't think he remembered me or knew me. I didn't even know he knew me. And that was it. And then as I started wrestling for him as Damian Stone, and every day, every weekend, it would be like, oh, you remind me of like Joe Pesci. You'd be short, short but tempered but feisty. And then one day, after like a month and a half, he comes up. He goes, "You're gonna be Little Guido." He goes, "You're Little Guido." He goes, "You're JT Smith's cousin." And we went out in Queens, and we did the thing where he came out, and I came out, and he got hit in the head with a frying pan and thought he was my cousin. That's all those started. So the question was, when did I start with ECW? I actually started before Taz and Tommy and all those guys, 1993, with Tommy Cairo, who they know too, Tommy Cairo very well. But just the way things work.
Yeah, of course. And so Little Guido is born in this whole new revolution of ECW. So your style, though, in the ring, I felt was like the opposite of what, people, if you heard of ECW in the 90s, you thought of chairs, barbed wire, fire, thumbtacks, but you were out there, you were wrestling, you were putting on clinics. So was there a problem with trying to go into steel cages and steel chairs, and you didn't want to do that?
No. Well, no, I would say I wouldn't want to do that. New Jack, if you look tables, through off the balcony, and I won, me and Tracy Smothers won the titles from New Jack and Coronas at the ECW arena, and like the us versus the Dudleys versus maybe the Pitbulls, and we were getting hit with all kinds of stuff there, all kinds of. So I know I've done it. I've done that there before. But then it came a time where, it's funny. People always say that when we would do house shows, there was a lot more wrestling on there. There was like one match of the craziness. But when you watched the TV, Paulie would show little clips of little wrestling matches like Dean Malenko and Eddie at that time and stuff. And then he would show mostly hardcore stuff on TV. So, Fred, we weren't doing that on all the house shows. That was being done in one match. We weren't doing that all over, but I understand what they're saying. When you see it on TV, that's all you see.
Yeah.
We tape TV, that's what we do, And then it kind of changed going, as time went on and became a little more wrestling on the show. When Tracy and Tommy came in and they would do the old style wrestling. So we would put our matches on and we were mostly wrestling matches. And then when Tracy and Tommy left and then he brought in Super Crazy and Tajiri, who were great wrestlers. And, and then I think he started with Rey Mysterio around then too. Like Rey was here for a while when I was here. So Paul was actually bringing the luchas in and the smart marks knew who these people were, So, and that's how the wrestling started being on the show too. And that's how the fans gave, super respect for guys like Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko when they were doing those matches. And when he did his farewell match with, so there, I always ended up with a wrestling thing, but I did those matches. I've been through tables numerous times. I've been hit with chairs. Paul Mahoney one time, we worked with him for 3 months. Me and Tracy were dying my elbows because, towards the end, I was bringing my elbows up and he broke both my Bertha sacks. Not that he meant it, but, I couldn't take it to the head anymore. So my elbows had all these big bubbles. We'd have to stick needles in them. They're called Bertha sacks. So you go to put your elbow on the table, it would like hit your funny bone. So I transitioned, thank God, into regular wrestling matches when the big guys left me when and I had then they brought in Tony Mamaluke and we were wrestling Mikey Whipwreck, Tajiri and all those guys. So
Big Sal Graziano.
Big Sal, he was great for me, especially when after Tracy and Tommy left, it was just me and they were using me there as like a cruiserweight versus Tajiri and Super Crazy, Jerry Lynn at the time, and I was wrestling Rob Van Dam for the TV title from Chicago. And then having Big Sal with me since I was small was always a help because he would always get involved at the right times. So, he helped me keep moving in ECW. And it's just like Chuck Palumbo and Johnny Stamboli. Because I was paired with those guys, especially mostly when I first went to WWE, was because the reason why I was able to do programs with The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, all those guys, APA, was because I had Tracy and Tommy. So when Jamie Noble, Brian Kendrick, Paul London were all doing that cruiserweight thing at the time. And at the time, Keo and stuff, they weren't getting much time. Cruiserweights, much time on the show. They got their match. But for 2.5 years, when I was with Chuck and Johnny, they had me working against Benoit. I had Chuck and Johnny as my boys. I would never wrestle versus those guys. I was wrestling with the Guerreros, Eddie and Chavo. We were doing tag matches. I was managing at that time, but I still was involved. I wrestled Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, and I think one of the APAs at Madison Square Garden, a 6-man tag. Me, Trace, me, obviously, Chuck and Johnny.
Yeah,
that part. Yeah. So I was very lucky. That gave me extra miles on my career because I was there 8-9 years. That's because they used me as the FBI and with Chuck and Johnny for a good 3 years or whatever it was, 3.5. Then I branched on my own. Then they brought back the ECW, and then I stayed a few more years. And then eventually, your time is done. It's done. So, I was very lucky by having, Chuck, Pete, and, I had so many partners, I really can't remember their names.
Yeah, there was a lot of people in the FBI. Who created the FBI? Was it Paul Heyman, Todd Gordon, yourself?
No, Paul. People, first of all, more history. People think I'm the creator. Everybody say, "Oh, I'm the lone stave," because I've had numerous partners. It's not true. Before I came in, when I went there to meet Paul as Damian Stone, they had J.T. Smith doing the Italian gimmick, doing the FBI. He was Italian. He thought he was Italian. So I met J.T. Smith there. I had no idea about the FBI. So remember what I said before. For a couple of months, I was working all the shows as Damian Stone. From when I met Paul Heyman, he didn't have an idea, and that's when he started saying, "You remind me of a Joe Pesci, blah blah blah." So all of a sudden, at TV, like I said before, that's when he told me that you're going to be Little Guido, and you're going to be put with J.T. Smith. So J.T. Smith was the original member. Everybody thinks me. what happened with JT Smith is we did our thing for about a year and a half, and JT Smith ended up getting a great job and moving out of Philadelphia. He moved to like South Carolina or wherever he went. So he actually quit the business.
Oh, wow.
When he quit, it left me on my own. Now I was by myself. So now Paulie, that's when he brought it. Then at the time he was bringing in Tommy Rich. Then he had Tommy Rich come in, and he had Tommy Rich like manage me and pretend to give me lessons. I was like, so I could move up the ladder. Then he brought in Tracy Smothers. Next thing you know, bang, we're the FBI again. Now it's me, Tommy Rich, Tracy Smothers. From JT Smith. And then after that, I've had Mabel in there for a little while. I've had the One Man Gang. I had Davey Paisano. I had Tony Mamaluke. I had Big Sal. So I had all those guys, and then Chuck and Johnny, of course, in WWE. And then I had all those guys, and even now it's still with MLW. It's now I have another partner. I got the Ray Jazz.
Yeah,
doing the FBI again. So for people that think that I'm the original creator, no. Well, Paul Heyman's the creator. He came up with the Full Blood Italians. But as far as the first guy who ever did the gimmick, it was JT Smith, not me.
So who owns like the FBI like copyright?
Well, now MLW is using it. WWE owned it at that time. I couldn't use it, and for a couple of years after that, they did break balls. But as time went on, they dropped my Nunzio name. Like they got to keep paying for it. So they kept paying for it for a few years when I left. It's already 2023. I left there in 2011. There's no need. I don't really. What do I use it on? I do a lot of independent shows, and honestly, MLW is the only one. So, but MLW, I'm sure, looked into it, and if WWE owned it, they will not be using it. So I don't think they did. And I'm able to use. They use Little Guido on MLW TV. I'm sure they looked all that stuff up.
Right.
So,
because Because I was just wondering. I was like, I know there's been problems. Like right now in the WWE, they brought back LWO, and those T-shirts are selling like crazy. I would imagine if they ever brought back the FBI name, those would sell like crazy too, because just the Full-Blooded Italians and the logo itself is very marketable, just like the NWO logo, the DX logo. So like
we're in ECW. We saw shirts all over the place. People were buying our shirts all the time with our names on them. I used to have the shirts then. Now Ray Jazz has shirts, but that's up to MLW if they want to do a merchandise thing with us. And honestly, I think they would sell. Like you said, it's an easy one. It's really not, it's FBI.
Right.
And he buys them himself, and he sells them at the intermissions on shows, and they sell. So, that's up to them. That's up to them.
Of course, it's going well. So your chemistry with Tajiri and Super Crazy and Mikey Whipwreck, is that all just, as we know that it's a dance in the ring, but at the same time, are you backstage preparing everything? Because it seemed like it was impossible. Every reversal and every move was just crisp.
We definitely had to rehearse. There's no way you could pull that off and let it come out the way it does sometimes. And then sometimes it doesn't come out the way you want it. That sometimes fans don't even notice it because they don't know what's supposed to happen to begin with. That's something that we always have to think about in the locker room. We know what we're going to do. When we mess it up or forget to do it or something misses and we're not able to get to it and fans can see that something happened, you got to just stay on track and remember they didn't know what was going to happen anyway. So it's really not a big deal. You just got to go with the stride and maybe throw it in a couple seconds later, regroup and go do it again.
Yeah.
Depending. So you definitely got to go over matches. And they were complicated at times. You get there early and discuss things, and then after a while, it was like a dance where I got so used to working with all these guys. You can say, hey, we're putting a match together. Hey, crazy. What we did in Minnesota, we did this, and this. We'll just throw that in there. And then, or we did this over here, because certain things only work in certain towns. Certain shit don't do. So, certain things. And then you pick that up when you're wrestling constantly. You know the towns. You know what to do in what town, what type of crowd you're going to be in front of,
Of course.
But once all the little components came together and us working together 3-4 times a week, for a couple of years, it's just, it's possible. And I got to be honest, I watch AEW and the same things I'm sure people say about ECW, and I think it's great. I watch it, but I say to myself, there's no way I could keep up with them guys anymore. And it's great watching it because a lot of those guys there, I remember when I left WWE, they were on the independent, still trying to make it, and I love a lot of them and probably never going to see them again. But I was able to see a lot of those guys that were not on TV yet were trying to make it, and on the independents. And this is when I left WWE, so I was on the independents trying to think of my next move in the world. You know, they were trying to make it, and obviously a bunch of them did. So, but sometimes I watched the match, and I'm like, holy cow! Like I couldn't remember some of that stuff. I just couldn't remember, and I'd say to myself, probably people say that Tito Santana, maybe not Tito, but I'm just saying. When I watch ECW, what the hell is all that crap going on there? Because the '80s was different than what we were doing.
Right.
You know, I totally get I could call in the ring. I can get in the ring, call an old school match, be tackle, drop down. Go through the whole match without called in the back. But that's the base. There's no way some of the stuff that we do, you could just go out there and call it in the ring.
Right.
Certain way the matches are put together today. I think you got to know how to hold a guy or know how to where to be for a guy. You know, there's a lot more goes into it. It ain't like it was. And there's nothing wrong with that. That was the style. That's the style that I grew up watching, you know, and that's, you know, so you could get in the ring. And then I could do an old school match. And I stand and totally respect that say, because the business changes all the time. So it changed a lot now from when I was there, and it changed from the 80s and 90s when I was watching as a fan. You know, business always changes. I was part of it changing. I believe in the early ECW days that was a revolution that changed the business, and now it's changed again since then.